Tell me about Australia. I'm really curious. Is it true the stories I hear, like the insects are out to kill you, the kangaroos are out to kill you?
Absolutely, drop bears are real, and you know the boogeyman spends summer here, and we actually don't do Christmas at all. We just like go out and fight kangaroos. To be honest, we're like it's all fear. It's all fear out here.
Okay, good to
No,
know. Good
yeah,
to know.
yeah. Do you know what? It's funny you say that because I sort of see Florida as Australia over
You're
there.
right. You're right. We Florida is like the Australia of the United States.
You have no idea how badly I want to go. Like every time I see a news article and it's like, you know, like woman stabs brother, shoves him back of car with alligator, and like they find out they're blood sisters, blood siblings 7 years later. I don't know. I'm like, I'm so intrigued. I'm like, for part, like just one time in my life, I want to be in a Florida news article.
I've been to Florida enough times, and I've heard a lot of enough stories about Australia. I think you guys would be disappointed if you did come to
Oh
Florida.
no, don't say that.
Genuinely, Australia seems like a much more interesting place to be.
No, I think Aussies just like stirring people up. So we make up there's probably a lot more danger
Maybe,
than what it
maybe,
is.
yeah.
That or we're conditioned to the danger, I'm not sure.
You guys' definition of danger is just a lot different than ours or Floridians, I guess.
Yeah, like Mick Fanning, typical one, I guess, is Mick Fanning, one of our famous surfers, just punching a shark that got in the way during one of his competitions. That's probably gone down as the iconic moment.
That was
But
great. Yeah, I think I heard about that.
yeah, that's sort of how we take it. You just have to take it in stride. You laugh or you cry.
Awesome. That's right. I guess there's no in between.
Yeah, exactly. And it's too sunny here to cry. So we're
All right then.
not mad about it.
Nice. So I love your pronouns, by the way. Yeehaw. It's something we lack here in the U.S. Really, it's really the opposite way, and I'm getting tired of it. I have been for quite some time now.
Yeah, yeah, it's something that I feel like I try to approach the I guess the more woke agenda or the parts of society that are a bit distasteful now with a bit of a humorous approach. For me, I think humor goes a long way. I think you've seen that in the memes that have come out since the pandemic, and there's a few other aspects. But I think humor goes a long way because frankly, the woke or the left side don't really have a humorous, like a sense of humor
Yep,
themselves.
absolutely
So
not.
yeah, they either get irritated by it, and I've definitely have received death threats. I've been in that scenario, um, or they just, yeah, like, or they just usually implode. It tends to be the way. But I find people usually laugh at it. A couple of times I've had a
It's
few clients or people pointed out where I'm like, oh, forgot I had that on my profile, but I'm not backing down.
really.
Yeah.
It's I think it's for us like conservatives. It's much funnier when they do get it irritated. Like it adds to the joke.
I think that's half it because half the time the joke is really them being angry with just a
Right.
caption.
Exactly.
So you're really just providing the meme for my subtitles. Like, thank you. But no, I tend to, but I also, I think it's good if you can encourage conversation through humor too. I find people, if you do occasionally get people who have hugely differing views from you, but you can come together through humor. So, and frankly, if you're triggered by what I have to say in when I say it in like the most humorous, don't judge me kind of fashion, then I don't really have time for you.
Yeah. So be it. I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not gonna cry about it. Somebody told me I should go on as this female Tate. I'm like, oh no, I don't know. I don't know if that would
Really.
go down well. Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of like mixed on that. Well, do you like Tate? Are you a fan of Tate or
I used to, but then do you know Jordan
interesting?
Peterson?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he did a bit on Tate, and he's like he does like I'm fully on board with the message that men should be masculine, they should be providers and all that, but I feel
Mm.
like the way that he presents it in a very extreme fashion does need to be tweaked a little bit. I think it's a little too extreme, and he caters to a certain audience that isn't what he aspires to be. I think it can be improved, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think part of it, it's like anything, and part of it's sensationalism. And I think, to be honest, without him having that form of sensationalism, like half of it's slightly tongue in cheek, right? It's like a
Right.
lot of that, a
Exactly.
lot of what I say is slightly tongue in cheek as well. But there's always like that little bit of truth. That's usually what people get really mad about. And I think he's managed to sort of harness that little bit of truth while keeping it very tongue in cheek and going very sensationalist. Like it's meant to provoke because that's what gets views. even negative exposure is good exposure in a way. So it's like people who share views that will get you cancelled. That's great exposure in certain realms on the internet. So I and Jordan Peterson, I love him actually. I'm a big fan of his work. I think that he is definitely a bit older, and they've got completely like obviously completely opposing views. I could not imagine those two in a room together. And I think he also dated Jordan Peterson's daughter, Michaela, at one point. So
Yeah,
Jordan
that's
Peterson's
up in
like,
the air.
I
That's
doubly hate you. Fuck
yeah.
you. He's like, it's got nothing to do with personal relationships. I hate the man. Like,
Yeah, he slept with my daughter. Totally.
yeah. He's like, and he slept with my daughter. No, I mean, I don't know if he did, but it's just, yeah, they're very polar opposite views, but I think they've both got very interesting points.
It's Tate has like he's accepted, like he's admitted like he will put some bit of truth and like making it a very, very like erratic and like extreme phrasing, I guess. Like that's
Oh,
why he's taken off. Like he said that before. He's like, I know exactly why I'm doing this.
yeah, like and you can see it in his face, and like they'll
Yeah.
say stuff that's like deliberately provoking. Like there's things that he says that I definitely do not agree with in terms of there's some like women comments, but then he also contradicts himself. Like he'll put up and say other things that completely contradict what I have a problem with. And I'm pretty open-minded, but I know that he's saying it in a way to provoke and sort of, get attention and get his point across. And sometimes the point that's underneath it isn't so bad. It's just the way he says it is so irritating.
Yeah. I mean,
But
as a
also,
content creator, I understand. We get it.
yeah, I think that's part of it. I guess like a little part of me like don't I kind of relate to him because I'm like, look, I love women, but I am also a misogynist. So I completely relate to that.
Okay. Nice. Nice. Good to hear it.
It is what it is.
So, quick, I just want to detour real quick. What do you mean by
Yeah.
dating traditionalist? What does that mean?
Date tradition. What's a good way to put it across? I find traditionalism is, I think what we've found now is that people have replaced traditionalism with trends. And that also comes to dating. I think the world that people are facing now from a dating aspect has become, from a women's point of view, very hypergamous, and from a male's point of view, just outright depressing. And it's really depressing on both sides, to be honest. But for me, I think a dating traditionalist is someone who rejects the modern form of dating, and sort of embrace gender roles. And it's not so much about equality of outcome, it's more about the equality of the sexes embracing that individuality. So,
How do gender roles affect modern dating? If you could jump into that.
yeah, well, a really good example, one that actually pops up on a lot of dating coaches would be like, who pays for dinner, or so in terms of like gender roles, it comes down like, it's finance, it's who's cleaning the kitchen, it's like the division of roles has become very blurred. And like honestly, like women are sick of it. Like you've got a few people who will speak out loud. A lot of women who don't speak are the ones who want nothing to do with it. Like women want to be safe, and women want to be loved and heard. And then I think for men, and correct me if I'm wrong, men want to be respected and men want to be admired. Who doesn't want that? And they do want responsibility. Like that's part of like, suffering and growth. And for men, having that form of responsibility and looking after someone does inspire growth. That's why usually men in relationships, I think, often will advance. Even Tate said this, you have a good woman by your side, and you can do anything. And I think that also comes down to the division of gender roles. So I get irritated sometimes when I see people come up and they're talking about, or like, who should pay for dinner, and there's these jokes around like, men are splitting the bill now because women are making the date not worth it. And it's sort of like that red pill content. And that's the kind of red pill content I disagree with, because they're asking what women bring to the table in the first date when it's actually not about that at all. So like I'm very big on men paying for the first date because I think that encourages the traditionalism and gender roles, which is what part of what a man brings to the table is quite physical and what a woman brings to the table is spiritual. Unfortunately, we've lost a lot of that. So when they ask what a woman brings to the table on the first date, honestly, nothing. We're useless on the first date. We're like, we smile and we laugh and we just go like, oh, rats into you. That's what, like, ideally, if that's what the intention of the date is, to find out more about each other. But I hate that where they're like, what do you bring to the table? And it's actually taking a very wanting the woman to take a very masculine approach. And it's not about that at all. We're like, look, we're probably going to be absolutely infatuated with you by the end of dinner. But it's the men will come and say, this is what I can provide. Here is the physical world, and I've got you. And then it's up to the woman what she does with that from there. Whether it be conversation, but he's shown what he can do for her physical world. Now she can show what she does for his spiritual side.
Okay. Yeah, I think the most profound thing you said was a man wants respect and responsibility mostly. I feel like men who don't get those two, they usually spiral down a very dark, dark path eventually.
I think it
Leads to
usually
chaos.
ends. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I think a really good example is I think Julie Savola and Nietzsche sort of touched on that, where basically a man will descend into chaos unless he goes through some form of meaningful suffering or finds meaning in the suffering. But there's also a huge amount of responsibility comes with that, and I think there's definitely a transition part, which obviously you would know more about, but where I think men go between the boy to the man, and it's sort of very often a lot of women will get hurt along the way because there's like, but I mean, part of becoming a boy to a man
I think it
definitely
depends on
involves.
how that transition happens. Like for some, I mean, some men never go through that transition. Like what I think personally, and for some men, they go to the transition, but sometimes women are involved, sometimes women aren't involved. So it just depends on the person, I guess.
I think you definitely have more like a more rounded understanding as a man if the woman is involved. But yeah, I think that's something that's happened since the dawn of time though, where it's like
Yeah.
the division of the sexes and what men need and what women need are very different things. So, but part of modern dating, I think, is a lot more around narcissistic, hurting, and casual sex than it is around meaningful connections. And I think boys and girls are crying out for that.
So what's the end product of that? I mean, you have a relationship with just casual sex and no emotion whatsoever. Where does that lead, in your opinion?
I think it will lead, I think at some point it leads to self-obsession, because I think if you valid and sort of like lack of self-worth, because if you're putting validation into or placing your worth into validation of other people, it will get old after a bit. It will never be enough to fill you. And it's psychologically, there's been studies shown as well, it psychologically wrecks you after a certain period. Especially for women, this is controversial, but it does affect women more so than men, because your oxytocin levels as a woman actually don't replenish. So every time you get a new sexual partner, um, this is just sort of general studies done. Every time you get a new sexual partner, your oxytocin levels don't actually go high; they reduce. So if a woman's been through, let's say, like a huge body count, controversial subject, it's actually got nothing to do. It's got everything to do with their psyche afterwards. Is that their oxytocin level actually gradually gets worn down and is not able to replenish, and then they actually lose the ability to feel, and so that sense of meaningless that sort of is associated with like a run through woman or like those terms that pop up. It is actually scientifically proven. It's not just something a conservatives popped up with and ran.
We're not to blame for that. It's just
But
yeah.
I think yeah, no, but like it's definitely, but it's one of those controversial subjects where it's really hard for a
Yeah.
guy to turn around and say it. But like for me, I'm like, I find it more interesting about the studies that come out, because it's it's not just you know societal standards that women kick up a fuss about. It's actually biological. We're not biologically wired to love and be across that many people. While for men it's a little bit different, because
Yeah, I
men
guess
sort of.
men are built to be polygamous. Like And yeah, I mean, not my personal opinion, just that's the science of it. Don't come at me.
Well, no, like no, but like it sucks. Like I mean, I definitely didn't want to believe that when I was younger either. But like it does suck, but it doesn't mean that it's not true. And
Yeah.
men were biologically, like regardless, completely separate to societal norms or what is morally correct. Men are biologically wired to conquer and reproduce, and men are very visual creatures. Women are very much the opposite, where they don't. They don't have the need to conquer. Like women are more, they're more of like the soft feminine frame where like they want to be loved, protected, and pampered. And that's why, you know, it's very important to remain a balanced society because the feminine frame is sort of where our society is led to at the moment. We're a very soft and pampered and nanny state. And you definitely need a balance of the two energies. But that's the thing, they are two very different energies, and men and women aren't wired the same when it comes to sex.
Yeah. I mean, they're not supposed to be. That's why they work so well together. I like to
But
think of it as like, I don't know if you might disagree with me on this, but like the masculine frame is built to build, with responsibility, and then femininity is built more on nurturing.
yeah, no, I think that's correct to a point. I think you sort of see in society where like women are more community creatures, and like we used to like, form communities and we sort of seek validation through society. Women are definitely validating seeking creatures. It's not even a bad thing, to be honest. Like, I mean, it's definitely turned toxic now because, to be honest, like Instagram for girls is a very toxic location, and it brings out your absolute worst shadows 100%. But it's definitely not a bad thing when it's used because it's societal status, it's community involvement. There was a lot of good that used to come out of it, and now unfortunately women are all isolated and sitting behind a phone, and so the only way they seek validation is very surface level. It's not deep and meaningful anymore. I think that's a problem. Everyone's been so isolated individually with tech.
With social media.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
What's in your opinion, what's the healthiest way to use validation to your advantage for a woman?
Well, I think a understanding what it is, because a lot of women will go through life unconsciously. What's the famous saying by Carl Jung? You will go through what is remains in the unconscious. You will call it fate, something like that. I don't think I said that quite right, but it was, if you don't acknowledge the unconscious, it will guide your life and you will call it fate. And I think a lot of women,
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
yeah, yeah. So I think a lot of women don't actually realize that this is something that they unconsciously do. So a lot of the time, women are very demonized, but very often they're just like a little bit airheaded and they don't quite know why they do what they do. But honestly, like what I see at the moment is just like women want love. And so when they express that and they put like, let's say pictures or um, their body out there, it's in terms of they do it for love. And there's a lot of definitely broken and hurt girls out there and girls who don't quite understand their own psyche. So in terms of like using that validation in a constructive way, not, well, obviously, not responding to every person that you see, not having to please every person that you see. Like you always see women are the ones that are putting up about how to stop being a people pleaser, and you don't see men posting any of that. And they do it with their body, they do it with images, and they do it in person. And I think like it's worn a lot of women out too, because they're getting hit from it on all sides with social media. Like they do it to themselves. Once again, this is a very unconscious thing that they're doing. So I think sort of understanding why you do it in the first place will sort of make you check yourself a little bit. And then seeking validation is not necessarily a bad thing, but knowing that it's more like once you're more comfortable with yourself, it's not going to dramatically change who you are if people aren't constantly validating you. So it becomes a pleasure, but it doesn't come in a necessity. So I think it's more like understanding your psyche. So you gradually work through that. So you come to that stage where it's not necessarily a necessity, but just a byproduct that you enjoy.
Just like a side benefit that's not a foundation, but just a perk.
Yeah, it's like women's attention's going to fade out when you like, at some point you're going to age out, you're not going to get as much
Right.
male attention. And if you haven't reached that part of your psyche where you're okay with that, you're going to absolutely break down at 45.
Yeah.
I'm like making mental notes myself because I'm like, I don't think I can keep it up to 45. So
Mhm. And just be
but
extremely fit. Maybe get some Botox. I don't know.
100%, maybe a new face. Definitely. Well, whatever they do in America seems to be working.
Ah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. We were going down a dark path, but hopefully the future holds brighter things. So,
Are you? Oh, sorry.
go ahead. What were you saying?
Oh, I'm just curious whether how America feels about in terms of the new election and starting early next year. How you
I
guys
mean,
think that will change things?
the people have spoken. Like, we know who won, and we know why he won. And the one thing I can say is, well, I'm in Chicago, and Illinois is a blue state. But if you look closer at the polls at this year for this election, it was close. Like usually it's not close. Usually it's very dark blue, and most people are just liberal sided. But this year, for the first time, I think in a while, it was like a 49-51 point something like that. It was a very close red, and
Oh
so I
wow,
think that shows like how such a blue, like deeply blue state, so much has happened in the past 4 years that these people have changed their minds, and that shows a lot about the liberal side and the Democratic Party. So I think it's an awakening call. I've had some people on the show say that it was good that we had Biden for 4 years, just so people can see the shit show that happened. But that's another
interesting.
story entirely. But yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot of promises, and we'll just see. I'm hopeful. My fingers are crossed.
yeah, no, definitely. I think everyone's sort of watching America. I know from Australia, I had someone
I mean,
American who was,
you guys are helping out. Sky News Australia has
oh, we're
been
fascinated
great.
with it. No, you don't
Yeah.
understand. You guys are on reality TV because, like, we don't watch the Kardashians, and like our politicians are so boring here. Like, we're so, but politics don't move here.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like constant
we have
in.
intriguing politicians, so it's fun.
So good. Yeah, we don't know who's on fire, like what Hunter's doing, which crack wars today. Like, it's just great. It's just great. We definitely prefer it over any of our news. So thank you.
Hey,
I'll be a bit sad
you're
missing some
welcome
of
for the
that a bit.
entertainment.
Yeah, like if it goes too well over there, I'm going to be a little bit, I'm not sure where I'm going to get my fix from, but but I do wish you guys the best.
Yep, thank you, thank you. We got high hopes. Yeah. So one thing I want to ask you is what are your thoughts on dating apps? Um, how do you think they should perform, or like what should we do with dating apps?
I honestly think throw them all out the window.
Yeah.
They need to go. Yeah,
Okay.
they're honestly they're encouraging hyper. Oh, like this annoys me. I'm
Tinder.
definitely yeah. I'm sort of a bit of a I can consecutively hold two views and contradict myself at the same time. Where I can be like, I think it's encouraging women to, I'm a scantily clad blonde that's like, I think it's encouraging women to, be hypergamous and like do this and do that. And like, but to be honest, if I'm going to be absolutely brutal, Tinder is a one-way show of nobody, like it, a one-way show of women getting all the attention and men getting none. There was actually a study shown where 80% of women go for about the top, I think it was the top
2 or 3%.
5%.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
two, yeah, sorry, I think
Okay.
you're right, two, three. I was saying five to be generous because I don't want to get the statistics wrong, but I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think it was probably a little bit less, like 2, 3%. Of males over
Like
a
for
certain
Tinder, it was like
height
2%, 2 to 3% of men get like 97% of the women.
of
Something
like
crazy like
the
yeah,
lowest base
yep.
women. Yeah. So if you're sort of like, it's never been such a good time to be mid because if you're mid, I hate that one. If you're mid, then you get all the attention, which is like further inflated what women think that they deserve.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting situation that we're in right now, like what apps have done and social media has done as well. Because social media is also being treated as like a I think there's a lot of benefits in social media, but it's also being as a dating app, it's
Right.
definitely
I
getting
mean,
treated in the
Instagram's a
same
dating
way.
app at this point.
Yeah, it's basically a dating app as well. But yeah, with Tinder as well, especially for a man, like a woman can't tell, like you can't. you can't see a chemical or have a chemical connection unless you meet someone. Like someone you would meet in a club that you would form a connection with, if you were to look them on an app, you would completely swipe left or swipe right, swipe left, because it's like you would see immediately, you'll go, what's your height? How much do you think you earn? Like, this is what I mean by women being slightly hypergamous right now. And also it's like sort of wired into their biology as well, because women want to have like a safe, prosperous relationship, you could say. And so without even realizing it's quite materialistic, but that's what they go for when they're looking on apps. So they will instantly assess the man. The tiniest ick will turn them off. And it's not, if you were to meet that same person out on a night out, you wouldn't be noticing the ick. You'd be noticing like what their eyes like, how they talk to you, how they make you feel. Do they make you feel safe, protected? Are you comfortable in their presence? Is their laugh nice? Like, there's so many different aspects where people are getting absolutely brutalized on Tinder and not getting any dates, but in person they work wonders. But nobody's going out anymore. They're all sitting behind Instagram because the filter's better, and they're swiping through on Tinder complaining where all the good men and women have gone.
That's right.
So
That's
just
right.
like, get off your phone and go touch grass. Anyway.
So if I saw that, like if a girl saw the same person that she didn't like on Tinder, but in real life, there's a much better chance of a success rate there, is what you're saying.
I think so, yeah. Like, if
Okay.
you've got two people who are open to dating and a man wants to approach a woman in real life, he will instantly get more respect. Even if nothing comes out of it, you'll instantly get more respect as opposed to a dating app. And she's not going to notice her. She's not going to be asking, are you over 6 foot? Or if she is, she's obnoxious and slap her. Don't, because that's domestic violence. Maybe I'll slap her. But then, like, she's not going to be asking what your height is or how much you're earning, or do you mean, like, those are very
Right.
obnoxious questions, which you can hide behind a phone. And that's when the worst parts of people come out, because you're not confronted, or you don't have any accountability.
So in person, you're kind of like you're forced to have an insightful conversation that actually goes somewhere, and not just like this, like surface level stuff.
Yeah, well, I think like even just the move of a guy making that first move on a girl, like, do you know what was really funny? So the app called Bumble, right? That was supposed to be where feminists thrive, right? Because feminists were the one who reach out to the men could message the women messaged the men. The women hated it so much. AI created an automatic chatbot for them to send and sort of scout out the guys. So they would send automated messages because they couldn't be fucked. And they're like, I hate this. I don't like approaching men. I don't like this method, because you don't feel like you're being chased or courted. Like, that's the way it is now.
Right.
So
Right.
Bumble just completely flips by demand, because women hate the idea of being the first one to approach.
I think that speaks a lot to the mentality and like the psyche of the feminine mind, I think.
Yeah, well, women do want to be led to a point, and there is such a variety of choice for women when you're in your early 20s on those apps. It's like you're completely bogged down with it. And then that's also another reason for you to be so picky. But if you're out on a night out, there's only usually a couple of people who approach you, right? And you have a lot more respect for people who do. And I can guarantee as well, having seen some of my friends' messages as well, I do not think men would say in person some of the things that they say on messages
No,
on
definitely
Tinder.
not. Definitely not.
It's so bad. So bad. Like,
It's
someone
yeah.
needs to give them some serious help.
I've seen some of them. It's not great out there. My condolences to you women for that.
I'm definitely not a part of that group, but I just watch from afar and I'm like, okay, you know, I give a little bit of advice, but everyone has to figure it out for themselves.
Okay. So I do want to go into another thing. What's your opinion on the perfect match or soulmate? What do you think of that?
Oh, do you know what? I'm gonna be controversial here. I don't think soulmates exist.
Okay. Why?
I think that's a Disney fantasy. And I think that that's also a lot of reason why people are with anyone, because the idea that soulmate exists is that you have some form of perfection and there is a perfect person out there for you. And if there are flaws or anything that speaks otherwise, that's not it. It's an ick and you can do better. the grass is always greener somewhere else. You're seeking a soulmate. I would love to believe that I think soulmates do exist, but I think um, the nearest thing you can get to that is two very conscious people who are completely invested in being the best version of themselves for you and for them. And if you have morals and values that align, I think you can find that you can work with someone to become your soulmate. A soulmate, I think, is a work in progress. It's not something that spontaneously happens like Prince Charming and Cinderella.
So you build together. You don't find the right person. Okay.
Well, I mean, you can have that initially, right? Like that's what you have when
Right.
you initially
Okay.
meet someone. It's like I feel like there's three stages. I usually say what happens when you meet someone. There is that initial attraction. Everything's amazing. You feel like you've met Prince Charming or that princess, and you're having the best time of your life. Then gradually, human flaws start to come through, and arguments start, and that's where things start to really test, and you see who they are. And that's when you know usually when you make it or not. That's the end of the honeymoon period. Um, if you make it through that hard period, then ideally that's when you really start to foster those deep connections and that meaningful relationship. And that's usually what people are continuously working on till the end. Like I don't think a relationship's something perfect. And when you meet your soulmate, there's no work to be done. It just happens. It just works. I think, to be honest, Disney's played a huge part in sort of creating more Disney. Disney's played a huge part in creating this false reality for people, where they think they deserve like this amazing perfect person when really they're not that person themselves. And it's the prime example of the mid shooting for what the top basketball player or whatever, when she's really not even slightly on his level. She just has this like delulu existence, and a lot of people are living a delulu existence.
So that's a great way of
So
putting it. Interesting.
yeah, I just think if people what like it's just yeah. Anyway, I mean, I could go on about that one, but I just think like a key part of finding your soulmate is willing to be able to put the work into yourself as well as that person. A lot of people are not willing to look at themselves in the mirror.
Does that come before finding your soulmate, or like while you're with them, do you think?
I think that comes before finding your soulmate.
Or
I do believe like your energy will attract similar people. So if you have the right energy, eventually you'll find other people that are in your orbit, and then finding someone who is best suited to you um, is definitely like obviously like the possibility is a lot higher. But I think that you're still going to have flaws and parts of yourself that you need to fix. That's sort of reflected in that person when you meet them later on down the track, and that's part of the challenge. Like that's growth. The person that you meet is not the person you will know in 5 years. And to be honest, like that's a little sad, but you don't want the same person that you met in 5 years. You want someone who's grown with you, not stagnated.
someone better, someone that can reach their potential, I guess, right?
And we're like always got potential. You don't meet someone and you're
Right.
like, all right, like I'm done.
We're done.
I'm
Just
I'm 28. I'm done now. We've just solved life.
awesome. So Therese, this is the final question I ask all my guests. What are Therese's words of wisdom for the world?
Oh God, I'm not very good at that. That's off the cuff.
Yeah.
Was it one of my friends say to me every single time? She's like, if you believe you can do it, you're halfway there. I honestly think everyone just needs to. I think having a little bit more less stress and sort of embracing what makes you what makes your soul sing and like yourself better as a person is very necessary, because I think right now in the modern world we've been very pushed down and suppressed, and I think if people want to find out who they truly are, you really have to sort of like reconnect with yourself on a soul level, and that involves letting go a little bit. It's taken me a long time to get there. Still doing
Amazing.
it, still figuring it
Awesome.
out.
We're on a journey. We're getting there
Yeah,
eventually.
exactly.